Hello, welcome to Made by Me with Grey Roots. I'm Laura, Programs Coordinator here at Grey Roots Museum and Archives. I'm so glad you could join us to learn about carrot preserving and also create your very own carrot scissor holder, pencil holder. It could even be a napkin holder, whatever you would like it to be. So we are going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So this isn't live. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email us. If you're part of the program, you already know how to reach me. And if you aren't part of the program, make sure you visit greyroots.com for more information about how to contact us if you have any questions at all. So today is definitely a filmed version of things because we needed to ferment some carrots. And so obviously that takes a bit of time. So we are going to look at a little bit of how to preserve carrots through fermentation. I know I had never fermented carrots before, so it was a really interesting experience. Normally I just kind of blanch them and then freeze them, and then I can use them in soups later on. And I've also just this year, I'm going to be getting some containers and trying to preserve them in my garage over winter in the totes filled with sand. So there's a variety of different ways, and the pioneers or the settlers, the even non-settlers, the later time period, cold cellars were really important for preserving food over the winter. And if you could can it, that was really great. But fermentation was also important just because it was a really easy way. It's just, the salty water bath with some ingredients, and then you have your preserves with some wonderful good for you bacteria instead of bad for you bacteria. So we're going to look at how we preserved some fermented carrots. And when we come back, then we'll talk about the craft. So welcome to making pickled dilly carrots. This is from a recipe book called Batch, and it's in your package. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is look at the recipe because, as you can see, I chopped up some carrots, but I can't put them in the jar first. So into the sterilized jar, I placed the garlic, and that one I harvested from my home back in July. And then there's the dill that I harvested this morning. So I'm kind of eyeballing what a quarter of a cup would be, but you are welcome to actually use a measuring cup and then put it into the jar. From that, you're going to chop up all of your carrots. We used a couple of different varieties from the Owen Sound Farmers Market. We got them Saturday, so the day before we filmed, and even though it was such a tight turnaround, they were starting to get droopy. So if you are going to pickle something, you are going to want to make sure it's as fresh as possible. So once you have all your carrots chopped up into that 1/2 inch size, you're going to make sure that you pour in the salt. Now the salt needs to be non-ionized, so not table salt. You want it to be a coarser salt, and then once it's in there, you're going to shake it all up. Part of fermenting is like breaking down cell structures of things. But when you're shaking that salt around, you can be a little rough with it just to make sure it's all nicely covered, but it'll also help with that cell breakdown to help with the fermentation. So once you have that all done and you're happy with the salt distribution, you will add your filtered water. So I want to stress the filtered water part because if you use chlorinated water like we have here at the museum, that will affect the fermentation process. If you only have chlorinated water, you can just boil that water for 20 minutes and always boil extra just to make sure you have enough. Now, for this, I did put an elastic band on. You can do it loosely. You could also use a towel, but I hope you enjoy your pickled dilly carrots. And if you have any questions or if you have some really good feedback or want to share a picture, please do. So when it gets later on, I will definitely post a picture about how those carrots turned out and how they tasted. We still have a few days before we're allowed to taste them, but they smell amazing. I even made Adrian, my intrepid technological assistant, smell them. and they were really good. They smelled amazing. So we are going to talk about the craft now. And in your kit, you will have two felt kind of carroty shapes and then the green fronds. So with the greens, if you're actually getting them from your garden and you're interested in it, you can actually eat them. Don't eat the felt ones. But it's always very interesting. And we did pick an orange carrot, but carrots come in so many different colors. When I did the pickling, we had the orange carrots, but then we also had red skinned with a yellow core. And I know in my garden at home, we have at least 4 different colored carrots. So if you aren't happy with your orange carrot, you have your templates. So you can make whatever color of carrot you would like. But I thought these were really fun one of the few days I actually cleaned off my desk. I don't have pencils laying around. But when you're back at school, or if you have a nice desk at home, you can turn this into a nice pencil holder. And I've actually used the fronds just to put a cup holder for my water bottle. To help, with condensation, if that's ever an issue. But it's a fun way just to keep things organized and also remember the summer. So when you get started with your craft, when these were cut out, unfortunately, our scissors were not the greatest. So I'm not completely happy with personally, how the carrot looks, besides the fact they're 2 different sizes. They're kind of rough. So I am going to use my sewing scissors, and I'm just going to, I might clip them together just to make sure things don't move too much, because then that will just give me a bigger headache. So I'm just going to smooth out the edges. And at this point too, you can also think about how do you want your carrot to look? Does it need to be more unique looking? Anything like that, totally up to you, because again, your carrot and every carrot is very unique looking. I know some of ours come up out of the ground, wrapped around each other. Sometimes they have 2 parts that have gone down into the soil. So it's always really interesting. So you get to trim up your carrot however you would like. So I'm not a complete perfectionist. I just like it to be consistent, because it will be a pain when I start to sew if things shift. So I'm just going to trim up a little bit more. But you can also add some, unique little grooves or anything like that to really personalize it. So I'm a lot happier with this. And then when I look at this, and if I look at my example, I need to cut whatever one is going to be on top and just drop it a little bit. So with this, it was about 2 inches, 1.5 inches. I actually have a ruler. 1.5 inches, or about 4 centimeters. So it's kind of up to you how much space you want. You could even go further down so that you can see more. So I might actually try that. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a curve. And that's all I need to do. So now this part is extra, and then I have this, which is lovely. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a stitch, and I did do, for all of my stitches, I did 2 to I did a 1/4 inch, and then I went back and did another one a little bit further out. So what I'm going to do this time, I'm going to try maybe doing a zigzag just to see how that looks. And it's really just to help support this so it doesn't stretch too much as you're taking things in and out. So I'm just taking that one that I trimmed. And so now that I have it set up, I might change my stitch size to be a bit bigger. Perfect. And now for this, I normally do a back stitch, but I'm not going to, because I am going to clean it off when I do the top stitch. So I'm just going to do my nice fancy stitch. while I said I'm not a perfectionist, I'm not completely happy with it. Besides the fact my tension was a little bit off, I am going to do just a plain straight stitch, just because. And I'll take it back to size 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aim to be between my zigzag and the edge, just to make sure it's extra secure. And there we go. Lovely. And then the next thing, I'm going to kind of position it back on top and then think about how do I want it to look. So with the first one I did do some stitches in to show, it's a carrot. It's got little ridges in it sometimes. They're not perfectly flat. So that I just kind of free-handed and just kind of thought about, okay, well, where do I want some? And if I do that, I only want the top one. For time's sake, I'm just going to go straight into stitching it. And what I might do is just save this. Again, like it can be in whatever order you like. I'm going to just pin this together, set this aside, and then I'm going to get my frond out. When I did the example, I did use some lime green thread. This time, again, just for time's sake, I'm just going to use some white. And I just did some, not a plain stitch, a little bit different stitch, and then I just kind of went all over. It was a little difficult to do that. I definitely had to do a straight and then kind of a pivot to try and get it done. This time I'm just going to do a straight stitch, but again, I'm going to look at my frond and then see if I want to trim it up a bit. Just because part of it too is it's going to attach to the carrot, and it is a little big, a lot big. So I want there to be more height to my frond, but I also don't want to lose all of the bulk down here because that will help connect it. So I'm just going to go in here and just add a bit more height. Some of the ones in my garden are very, very tall. So I'm just going to go here. This one doesn't have that much definition, so I'm just going to get it to be a bit more defined. And same thing with the next nook, because I'm also going to stretch up the side on that one too. So I'll do that. And then this one will just be much smaller. Still trying to aim for like a rounded shape. But, so again, everything will look unique because you're welcome to trim it up however you would like. If you have other felt, you can even layer it and do like an applique design, which actually is a really good idea. Wish I had thought about that before right now. So you could use more felt, or you could even use like a cotton material. I'm honestly looking around me right now to see what's been grabbing distance, but I don't have anything. So I'm just going to do a stitch around the edges, and then I'll do some like crazy stitching. It's good to move slower with this one. I do find that working with felt is a little slippery. It could just be my machine. You could also do this part by hand. You could use like embroidery thread, anything like that. Definitely ways to customize this and make it yours. Okay. So now that I at least have a little bit of texture for the fronds, I am going to be able to take it and then kind of figure out where I like it. I'm actually going to trim that up a little bit more. And there we go. So I am going to clip this, but I don't want this green to be showing. So I am going to just trim it a little bit on both of the sides so that it won't show when I do my final stitching. You could do it before or after the stitching, whatever works for you. But I just like to hide it to begin with because otherwise I could cut the carrot instead. And I think, yep, perfect. So there we go. And if we look at my original, I'm going to do the double stitch, and that's what's going to hold it onto the carrot. So for this one, you're just going to pick a spot where you want to be the start and the finish. And again, I did the first seam with a 1/4 inch, and then I split the difference when I went around again, just because I thought it was too much at the edge. You could just do whatever you want. You could also just do a stitch, like a blanket stitch around the edge. And so I might do that. I might do the 1/4 inch, and then I might finish it with a blanket stitch this time, just to mix it up a little bit. So I'm going to do the first loop around though, just to make sure things are secure. And with this one, I will do a back stitch just to make sure things don't go anywhere, especially like my thread. Okay, there we go. And just like with the frond, it will be kind of tricky to navigate the turn. So just make sure you take things slow and encourage it to turn. Worst case, just set it down, lift your foot, and then do a pivot. Technically, carrots have points. And I feel when I'm stitching that my green has slipped a bit, so I'm just taking a break to make sure that it's nice and flat, and then I'll be able to put my foot back down. And there we go. So I'll get everything trimmed up. And there we go. So I did get a little bit of jiggle with some of the pieces, so I'll go back and trim that. But then I can close it off again and just make it look, take it up a little bit of a notch with the blanket stitch. I'm going to grab just a straight needle and then just go over a bit about the blanket stitch. Okay, so luckily I had some embroidery thread and I just picked a color that is more of a contrast so that you can see it. So I will do the blanket stitch, and I did do quilter's knot to make it nice and small, but I'll just start it by going through so it'll be hidden on the inside. Okay, so I'm just going to do a nice stitch. Needle's too thick. There we go. So I'm going to keep them fairly nice and tight. but it'll be a nice way to kind of clean it off and add a little bit more interest. So if you have some thread or embroidery thread or even yarn, you could try to do this. So yeah, I actually really like that. Just to add a little bit more of a hands-on element to it and, you know, get your simple machine of a needle to do some nice work for you. So I'm definitely going to finish it this way. But if you have any ideas about how to finish this, like send us an email. And I definitely would love to see what your carrots turn out like. And so please share an image with us, or if you post it online, you could tag us at hashtag MBM at Great, like MBM Grey Roots. And I will have the PDF of the recipe for the fermented carrots included. That came from a book called Batch that I was gifted, which is a really interesting book because it talks about all the different ways to preserve food and different kinds of food. So not just vegetables, but also fruits and even meats. Talks about fermentation, the hot water baths, the pressure canning, everything like that. And if you are interested more about canning, don't forget to look at our Kind of a Big Dill program for Made by Me. That was on Monday. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and we hope you have a really great day. Thank you for joining us.